Hey, so I'm here today visiting my good buddy Keith. We're going to do a bit of a shed raid on his epic collection and stuff that he's got here, with his permission of course. He's got some amazing cars and some amazing automobilia and memorabilia, and I think you're really going to enjoy this, so come check it out. This is cool. Alrighty, we have to start with this one here. This is an original steel-bodied Willis coupe. This car was New Zealand new road car, right-hand drive, genuine 3-window, super rare. All you hot rodders will know how special this car is, even without its New Zealand race history. But the car was rebuilt as a circuit racer or a road racer in the late 1950s or early 60s by a Kiwi driver called Red Dawson. He'd come from a speedway background, and this was, I believe, his introduction into circuit racing. He ditched the wheezy little 4-cylinder Willis motor, and he dropped in a small block Chevy, a 283 small block Chevy, and took this thing circuit racing. And it was a car that he ran up until about 1964 or thereabouts, and then he moved it on. Really made a name for himself in circuit racing. These pre-war American coupes were a popular car for a lot of racers in New Zealand in the early and mid-1960s, just because they were cheap and plentiful, and you could drop a fairly powerful V8 engine into them, and they ran pretty good. But a couple of owners after Dawson, a guy owned it, I believe, in Christchurch, and he had quite an assortment of Willis cars and parts, and this just sat in his front yard for, I believe, about 50 years or so. It was eventually purchased by a hot rodder named Harry Orkwood, and he sort of restored it, but he's retained as much of the originality as possible. So the original, the green paint that's on the main body section is the original paint. Those are the original numbers as per its race history from 60 odd years ago. I believe the front fenders and probably the hood are all replacement parts because the originals went walkabout somewhere, and I believe he restored the chassis, or he replaced the chassis because the original had some rust just from sitting out in the open for so many years. But take a look inside. It's fairly agricultural. These were brave drivers. These things were pretty scary, but they just were what they were. This is just what people raced back in the day. It's got a roll cage in it, or half cage sitting in there, but Keith has no plans to race it. It'll just be brought out for display purposes and maybe do a few demonstrations and things. But man, what a neat old car this is. There it is right there. The body alone is a fairly rare and valuable piece, as anyone that follows drag racing or hot rodding history will know that these steel-bodied Willis are super rare cars and super desirable. So this is a really cool piece. How about a Group A car then? Holden Commodore VL with the Walkinshaw Racing body kit on it. This was I believe, a Perkins engineering car built for the privateer team of Trevor Ashby and Steve Reed. These guys raced Group C, Group A for many years, mostly in Commodores, Lansvale Smash Repairs car. There's a few of these Group A cars in New Zealand, but this car has mostly Australian racing history, and it's since been restored back to the original Lansvale Smash Repairs colours. It's a beautiful looking car. Okay, a couple of cars parked here side by side. One is the 1968 Escort twin cam, originally owned and raced by Jack Naser, and parked alongside it is a Mark III Zephyr. This car was built by New Zealand racing legend Ernie Sprague, and this is not the original car that he raced in the early 1960s. He nearly won the New Zealand Saloon Car Championship in, I believe, 1963 with the Mark III Zephyr. This is a car that he built as a replica of his original, basically just to go historic car racing with. And Keith's owned this thing for years. It's a really neat old piece. As for the Escort, I think we'll do a separate piece on that just because it's a car with some really fascinating New Zealand history, and it's a genuine Lotus twin cam. So yeah, we'll come back to this one. It's a real neat piece. Okay, so the car up on the stand here, up on the hoist, is a Triumph Dolomite, and it was built by Ron Misson at Ron Hodgson Racing for Australian Group C racing in the 1970s. Made its debut at Amaru Park in 1977, raced at Bathurst 1977. Had quite a long history actually, running Group C and then I believe early Group A as well, 1985. And down to the information board down here. This thing is neat. These old Group C cars have a really strong following in Australia now. There's a big part of their racing history there from 1973 right through to 1984. This thing's really got some cool history to it. Cool looking car. Love the fender flares. Basically, this is probably a very similar spec to the FIA Group 2 cars that competed in Great Britain and Europe at the time.